Hi, Balint here from To A Being Online Yoga Studio. Today we're going to work into a little bit of myofascial release, a little bit of mobility work, working into heart space, shoulders, the neck, trying to release a little bit of tension that we tend to hold in the upper body. So there are a few things that you might want to try and seek out in your house. I've chosen to use a book today instead of one of my blocks. My blocks are particularly heavy. They're the cork style. So if you happen to have a much lighter block, you might use that instead. But I've gone with a book instead. And then this is a yoga myofascial release ball, but you might just use a tennis ball instead. So if you've got a massage ball, that's basically what this is. I will be utilizing that a little bit later on. And it doesn't have to be as big as that. It might be a bit smaller as well. And then I've just grabbed a cushion and a blanket as well. So actually that's a towel. So we're going to start lying down onto our backs. I'm just going to bring my book or your block sort of near the top edge of the mat. And I'll just pop these other items a little bit out of the way for now. I might use my towel as a little bit of a pillow. You might choose to do the same or not. And let's begin by just bringing ourselves into the space of awareness, choosing however you'd like to position the arms and the legs, just taking a moment to nestle in to your body, to your breath. Perhaps we could imagine that our breath is like a bridge from the external world to the internal world. I did steal that quote from one of the beautiful teachers that I follow. But it felt like this wonderful imagery. The breath is our bridge inwards. So just feeling into the sensation as it swirls in the nostrils or the lips. If you have your hands resting on your belly, maybe you feel into the volume of breath beneath the palms. It's like maybe we're shuffling through thoughts in the brain. And the shuffling becomes a little bit slower. And then when you choose a card, you're choosing to zone into breath. And then when you're ready, you're going to turn onto your left side. So I might bring my pillow in. I might like to bring that between my knees. You don't have to. It's just where I'm kind of deciding to go today. And I'm going to really sort of roll onto the left side. Maybe you've got something that props underneath the side of your head. And then with my left arm, I'm just going to sort of reach it out in front of me here like I would for a spinal twist, or maybe you cactus plant the left arm. And then I'm going to choose to reach back with my right hand, and I want to grab my block or your book, and I'm going to place it into the top of my right palm. Now, for me, it's relatively easy for my right shoulder to actually land onto the floor behind me. So what I'm going to choose to do is see if I can roll a little bit more onto my left side so that it becomes slightly harder for my right shoulder to just snuggle straight down into the ground. I'm going to see if I can keep my right arm just gently hovering just off the earth. It might be quite natural for your arm to hover off the earth. It might be very difficult to bring your arm down, but you're just going to a place where your arm will hover. Then we're going to bring a little bit of movement in here. So it's like you're taking your right arm through semicircles here. You might choose to keep the right elbow bent the whole time is you bring the elbow closer to the back body and then sweep the elbow higher. Maybe you'll ultimately bring the elbow in close towards the back body and go ahead and straighten through that right arm. And then perhaps you'll bring the elbow back up into a bent shape as you lift the right elbow and arm. So we're just sweeping through up and down motions. And you might notice a few little sticky parts, sticky spots. Maybe there's a bit of a jerky movement here and there. Maybe you notice little smoother movements, areas. And we see if we can keep the right arm just hovering off the earth. So you might need to make a few little adjustments here and there, keeping that right shoulder from actually touching down towards the ground. And perhaps you could now focus a little more with breaths being as easy as can be to help with a sense of smooth action of that arm. And then perhaps now you go ahead and just pause somewhere that feels good to pause. Don't worry if the arm does actually weight down, but just see if you can get into a spot that feels good and come to a space of stillness. Just feeling the gentle weight of your prop, easing open through armpit, right inner outer shoulder, through the girdle of the shoulder and the shoulder blade, the back of the body. And then just slowly come on out and come through to center. So just releasing your prop, bring yourself back to a shape of neutrality, back to center. And just doing again what feels right for you through arms and legs. Relatively quickly coming through to stillness and finding a release. Sometimes I like to refer to these moments of release, a moment of rebound. And just feeling into the left and the right side, bringing conscious awareness to any sensations, movements, awareness. So just so that you can see what's going on, I'm going to swivel all the way to the other end of my mat so that you can see the action of my arm, so that we work through to the other side. So this time you'll be leaning onto your right side body, and it'll be the left arm that peels back behind you. So it's like you're into a spinal twist, but you've got your prop in your left hand. So just setting yourself up, you want your left arm to be hovering, and you might notice that there is a difference between the two sides. I'm just sort of finding a little stillness to begin with, so that I notice that the arm is hovering. And then we take those semicircles, bringing the elbow in closer and then a little further away. So we're very much working the heart meridian, anahata as our chakra here. And Chinese medicine, that is connected to the fire element. Maybe you notice a little bit of heat that builds through some of these movements of the shoulder and the heart. And the heart is very much about connection with others, connection with ourselves. It's also open to vulnerabilities. We learn to open up through heart space. Perhaps we can learn to be a little more vulnerable. amongst others and vulnerable with ourselves. Again, you might notice some differences between the two sides here. Actually, the left lung is just slightly smaller than the right, so maybe you're noticing that it's very much, the breath feels different. Maybe you notice this side feels smoother or more jaggedy in movement. And it's just about cultivating awareness. It is not about finding judgment here. And again, just see if you can work into a little sweet spot. I've noticed that I was holding quite tense through my legs, my hips. So as I come into stillness, I'm just going to see if I can bring a little focus to other parts of the body and feel into a sense of release as I just try to hold still through the arm here. And allowing the breath to attempt to flow with ease. And you're just always moving within a capacity that feels right for your body. So your movement might have been much, much less than what I was able to do today. All right, let's come to a place of pause. Back to center. Releasing your props out of the way and coming to that space of rebound. Maybe you notice different sensations in the palms, the fingers, rippling through the length of one or both arms. Maybe you feel a warmth somewhere in the body, and coolness somewhere else. And then slowly come onto your side and gently lift your way up. So we'll come onto all fours here. And it might be that you do want to have a towel nearby. Maybe you'll use it, maybe you won't. Just going to move this prop a little bit out of the way. And we're heading towards puppy pose. So it might be that you want to start in tabletop here. Perhaps you'll transition the hips a little bit further back just to counter that weight. And then just start to reach those arms forwards. Perhaps you'll be able to drop the forearms, the elbows down to the ground. And that's where, for some of us, having a prop for the forehead can feel quite reassuring and nice. Some may choose to keep the arms reaching out, or maybe you'll widen the elbows, bending them, and maybe you create a little support with the hands for your forehead. And some of us will be fine without any props at all, just resting the forehead towards the ground. I do choose to keep the elbows relatively wide. I find that if they go narrower than the shoulders, then you might over time create a little pins and needle sensation or pinching. So don't worry if the elbows are wider than the shoulders. Your hands might come a little closer together, so you might just sort of bring one hand on top of the other in front of your forehead, your head. And then really allow the belly to become soft and the front body to expand. So you might notice that there's a little dip in the lumbar. The sit bones may be able to tilt upwards. So you might be really comfy here. You might end up changing it into a variation of child's pose, bringing the hips further back, widening the knees. Perhaps that's where you're hanging out today instead. Or maybe we could add on a little bit here. I'm going to add a little side sway in. So I'm going to start to reach over towards the left side first. So I'm going to lift up just a little bit here and then walk my hands towards the left side. And I want to see if I can really reach through my right arm. And it can be quite nice to bend through the left elbow. I've just sort of drawn the left elbow a little bit back towards my knees. And I'm aiming to reach out through that right arm, feeling into a sense of expansion through the right side of the body. And maybe you could even feel the right hip pull back away from the right shoulder. There is one more option that I might just offer for you. It's flipping the right palm, bringing the elbow in a little bit, and then maybe you're able to bring the right palm towards the back body. So it's like I've just placed my right palm between the shoulder blades, or maybe it's towards the back of the neck, depending on the length of your spine and arms. And I'm very lightly pressing down into the right upper arm, but allowing the chest to soften down. So don't feel that you have to add on anything at all. You could be in that first variation, or maybe you're still in a child's pose, or you've chosen to move back to a child's pose. So just for the last couple of breaths here, especially if you've taken the side sway, either variation, could you expand into the right ribs, fan and flare out as you inhale, and then exhale, soften. Maybe you notice the heart will drop down a little more. Inhaling, expanding the right side, and exhaling. And one more. And then we'll go ahead and release. We're going to come back through to center, so lifting up. And maybe it's child's pose that you need, or it's a sway through a cat-cow. Be as intuitive as you can here to what feels right for your release. Maybe it's child's pose. Maybe it's a little movement. And then we'll come back into tabletop, and we're going to go through to the other side. So if you chose the centered variation, you're just going back towards the centered one for a second round. Otherwise, walking the hands over towards the right side this time. And then I'm choosing to bend that right arm, bringing the right elbow in. You could do this in a child's pose variation, of course. Apologies for not mentioning that on the other side. So I'm trying to expand through the left side. I'm reaching that left hand as far over to the right side as it feels comfortable. And remember that last variation, if you're feeling like you can take it into that left shoulder, you bring the left elbow in relatively close, flip the left palm upwards, and then start to bring the left hand back as though you're trying to gently land that palm between the shoulder blades behind you. I like to really utilize my breath here, again using that as a bridge, but also using it as a way to attempt to soften into the muscles of the shoulder, around the ribs, the intercostal muscles, the biceps, the triceps, deltoid, just softening out here. Utilizing longer breaths if you can. 3 more rounds. And then slowly edging your way back through to center. And again, doing whatever feels releasing for you. You might like to try child's pose with the arms reaching back and letting the shoulders just gently drop. So in a moment we're going to be lying down, but I'd like to just show you a little spot on the back that we're going to see if we can nestle our tennis ball or our little massage ball into. So we're going to see if we can find this little sweet spot. It may not be that sweet, I can assure you. I find myofascia with the balls really quite intense, just a little FYI. So depending on how sort of sensitive we are, you'll be definitely building through this. And some of us have different sensitivities, of course. So I'm just trying to find a spot. So I'm just using my opposite hand now to shoulder, reaching over. And you might notice that you could just sort of feel out the top ridge of your shoulder blade. So it might be that you want to kind of move that around a little bit. So I've just lifted my right elbow out to the side. Doesn't matter which one you do. And I'm just trying to feel sort of the ridge of the top edge of my shoulder blade here. And then I want to try to go up a little bit, and I'm feeling actually into the muscle that's just above the shoulder blade. So it's about sort of less than an inch roughly from the very top of the shoulder area here. And I'm trying to sort of feel into it. Could feel quite sensitive just by touch for some of us, but it's into the muscle that's just above the top edge of the shoulder blade here. And just try to remember that spot, and that's where we're going to be placing the ball once we lay back. Now, some like to lift their hips when they do this, so you could choose to bring a block with you. You'll be putting that under the hips, or maybe you'll utilize a pillow. So I'm just going to start to lay back. It will intensify the sensation. So if you are choosing to, you could bring your hips up a little bit. I know I don't need it. So I'm actually going to not do it today. So I want to see if I can, I'll use my opposite hand. I'm just going to see if I can bring that ball into the spot that we were just trying to find there. That little fleshy bit, it's not actually on the bony part of the shoulder blade. I'm just trying to find that little fleshy bit right at the top of the shoulder blade. And then you choose what you're going to do with your arms. So you could keep, so I've gone for my right shoulder first. It doesn't really matter if you've gone for the left one, because we're going to swap it over anyway. So my right arm, the same side that I have the ball, I've just let it drape over my body, and then I'm just going to see if I can ease that shoulder down over time. And that could be enough. We don't have to change anything there. Maybe you're even cradling with the other hand, holding on to the elbow, and you'll just sort of ease yourself in a little bit there. Remember, you could have your hips on top of a block or not. Now, some of us are perfectly fine just staying still. Some of us do actually like a little bit of movement. I'll just do a demo, but it's not something that I'm going to do for a long time. For me, it is usually too much sensation right now. Definitely a tight spot on my body. So the same side arm that the ball is, I'm just going to start to take a few little sort of wiggles. And then maybe you'll turn the hand out so it's like that cactus plant shape. You can see that I can't even go that far. Maybe you'll do something very similar to when we had that prop, the book or the block in our hand, and you might do a very similar kind of movement. And if you are watching me, you'll see that I'm being very, very tentative and slow. You might be able to move a little bit faster, but it is a nice slow action. So I've just got a little furry friend coming to meet me here. Thank you. She just likes to check that I am still here. And you might notice that, similar to myself, over time, actually things start to feel a little more obtainable. You might think, oh, actually, okay, my body is softening. And then maybe again, you choose to just find a little bit of stillness. And we pause just for a little bit longer. Maybe you could imagine that your breath is soothing the muscles around the ball. I don't know about you, but when I work with the trigger point ball work, I will often feel other parts of the body. So not just the area that the ball is pressing into. And it really shows that our body is so interconnected. We don't just have arms and head and legs and feet. It is all one, interconnected through the fascia, the tissue, through the energy systems. Maybe just 2 more breaths. And then you want to be nice and tentative. Try to move really slowly, and we'll definitely take a little breather between the two sides. So again, just feeling in and breathing. Maybe you notice that one side feels a little longer. Maybe you notice one shoulder feels a little higher, lower, or perhaps it's even up into the neck or the head or down into the waist. And then we'll be thinking about trying to find the same spot on the other side. So I do suggest that you have soles of feet to the earth, the knees to the sky. Maybe you have that prop underneath the hips. And if you've got a block, I would not go super high, just on the lowest level, or bringing a pillow or a blanket underneath. And then using the opposite hand to the shoulder, you're snuggling that ball in so it's relatively high, and just trying to find that sweet spot on the other side. So for me, I like to do this very slowly in terms of building my movement. You might be a lot freer than myself. So initially just finding that sweet spot. I don't know if I would call it sweet initially. It did become sweet on the other side. And then if you're choosing to add a little bit of movement, you might just explore crossing the same arm where the ball is, so you're crossing it over the body. That's what I'm choosing to do anyway. And then over time, you might choose to bring the elbow out, palm faces up. So it's very similar to that movement that we did right at the beginning with the prop. I'm just going to come to a pause again. And then I'll think about adding a little bit of movement. I'm someone that suffers with migraines, and I know that this is very much part of that tension that I clearly hold in my own body. Either the migraine causes the tension or the tension causes the migraine. The chicken and the egg scenario. And I'm choosing to move now gradually and slowly. So don't feel that you have to follow exact movements that I am doing. It is time for you to explore in your own body. Maybe like myself, you do choose to keep coming back to a stabilizing breath. Maybe you'll find a little sweet spot that you feel that you might just come to pause with soon. And last couple of breaths. And then slowly coming on out. And just choosing a way to land. This moment of rebound will become a little Shavasana moment. And just feeling into the sense of spaciousness, the sense of openness, feeling into a sense of release. Here we begin to lengthen our breath, fill out the lungs once again. Maybe over time you'll turn that fuller breath into a deep sigh. Maybe you'd like to unfurl and reach the body, big inhale, and then curling your way onto your side body. Maybe a little nourishing squeeze, a rounding hug towards yourself. And we start to lift our way up to seated. Pulling palms together, a light touch of thumbs into heart space. A reminder of that dedication, of the journey of self-love. Thank you so much for joining today's practice. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Hi, Hannah here from Two Being Online Yoga Studio and Phoenix, our mascot.